Hello there, friends of Ice and Steel. Today we continue designing the next new League of Legends champion from our survey. After our last two videos where we created the Demacian characters, we are now entering a different region, so without further explanation, let's jump right in. The second to most anticipated character you people asked about was a Frostguard Draklorn warrior. To start with this, I will say a few words about them. The Draklorn are the high priests in the cult of the Three Sisters. They seldom leave the Frost Citadel and are the most devoted followers of Lissandra's cause. The Three Sisters are the original Iceborn, powerful leaders who led most clans in the Freljord over 10,000 years ago. Their names, Aurora, Sejuani and Lissandra, are as important in the Freljord as demigods like Anivia and the Bel'veth, if not more. The reason for the worship is that the Three Sisters sealed the void behind a barrier of true ice in the Howling Abyss. Unbeknownst to most, it was actually Lissandra who got into contact with them and was about to let them in the first place, but recognized them for the threat they were. She sacrificed her family and army to protect the world. Lissandra now searches frantically for more Iceborn, whose dreams she can use to keep the Watchers sleeping behind the barrier of ice. Lissandra's followers share a relative uniformity. Most of her followers are dehumanized to the point of having their faces being fully covered by helmets or dark ice constructs. Another important thing is that Lissandra tries to change the stories about the past, so that no one knows her part in it. So, how to design them? With so much uniformity and limited possibilities, it was hard to create a design for this special Draklorn that was actually unique enough to stand out. Similar to special stormtroopers or important Urukai, it's difficult to create something in the limited space. That being said, I've started with some iterations for the helmets. The helmets are the one thing which can convey the most character. The Draklorn have very distinct ones, always akin to the long shape of Lissandra's helmet. But in older designs there are different possibilities explored, so I tried my hand at it, and the one shape that spoke to me was something close to a bishop's headpiece. And now I think I have to get into the backstory of this particular character. Bergøn. With hands like knotted wood and hair like the sun on winter wheat, Bergøn was the first hunter of the Katagor clan. The hunters kept them safe and led them to grounds in order to survive the winter. The laughter and voices of his kin filled the air when he, like many warriors in the Freljord, stood side by side with them. But different than most of his people, he did not feel the cold as they did. When the fires went out on his patrols, it was no certain death for him. It was cold, but it did not cut him. And not only once did his power help him to hunt down prey, even without the help of a fire, Bergøn had survived a storm so mighty that their shaman was sure that she heard the roar of the thousand-pierced bear in the thunder. The wind howled, and Bergøn, at the end of one of his many hunts, sat between a few trees at the wayside, warming his hands on a small fire, its light casting shadows over the lines of his face, frost glistening in his beard and sparks reflecting in his tired eyes. Sleep was rare on long hunts, and Bergøn had gone for at least 3 days. It was a good catch, he thought, throwing it a look. Fresh snow had already crusted the thick wool. The horns were long as his legs and had come unpleasantly close to his face when he went in for the final blow. It now rested on a sled he had taken with him. Without it, the way back to the valley his people camped in would be impossible. A white cloud was stolen from his lips, quickly lost to the ever-present steam of frost that swept the hillside he made camp on. Standing up, the fresh snow that had fallen on his shoulders followed his breath into the dark that was looming around the fireplace like a fog. Bergøn walked over to the Elnuk, his thick boots crunching on the frozen ground. He had closed the beast's eyes after its final struggle. Now it lay there, even more indifferent to the cold than himself. With a steady hand he loosened the dagger from his leather belt, and in a fluid motion he cut off a strand of the mammal's hair, then a piece of its horn. Eventually he cut away a piece of its fat. Tossing the fur into the fire, the smell of burned hair whipped up for an instant, taking Bergøn's breath before being cast out of the fire circle. With a voice like a mountain sled covered by meat he spoke. Sejuani, give us a voice that carries to the stars, so that friends and fiend know we remain. Then followed the horn, and a bristling sound filled the circle.
Aurora, give us ears to hear, O blood, whenever they are calling.
As the fat was cast into the fire, a cloud of smoke and dust erupted, obscuring the Elnag.
Lissandra, give us the sight to take the right way, whatever it may cost.
Even though the wind was blowing, his words seemed to linger. Nodding, he sat back on the ground. The words were said, the night could come. In the fire the offerings still smoldered, and the coals gleamed while Bergön's tired eyes closed. "It seems there is hope for you," the voice said. Bergön opened his eyes. The flames were slowly burning, and behind it sat a figure, upright, but the face untouched by the dancing light. There was a silence. The wind was gone. All movement seemed to stop. It was the silence of the last drop of water, running over a frozen rock and slowly turning to ice. The cracking silence of ice that breaks the rock. It streamed in when it still was water. The flames stood still, and the figure leaned forward. If Bergön could, his eyes had widened, but he could not. In the light her skin glittered like the frost on a morning in autumn. It was the skin of a frozen person, grey, blue and pale, as if all blood had left her. She was neither young nor old, and still both of them. Her eyes were covered by a dark hood, and her lips looked like obsidian. It was the most beautiful and frightening face he had ever seen. "You called me." Her lips did not move. "And here I am, to give you vision. I know your dream, but are you willing to walk the path? To save your people? The Freljord?" Bergön was silent. Her hand stretched out about the frozen fire and touched him. A cold, like a knife through his core. A cold he had never experienced filled him, and he fell to the floor, shivering, panting. "It's what you need to master when you want to save them." "What is this?" Bergön growled with pressed lips. "There's more to being iceborn than just keeping the cold away." Her hand made a sweeping motion, and a shadow outside the circle started growing. Bergön stumbled away from the night. The shadows solidified, turning into eyes that seemed to be made out of crystallized darkness. "Move closer," a voice called out. Standing up from where he had fallen, Bergön looked upon the structure and saw weapons of steel, bronze, and ice glowing with a blue aura. Being iceborn means fighting the cold, and being able to resist the one cold that will end everything. Delicately he touched the hilt of a blade, and with a scream was forced to his knees. Uncontrollable searing pain and numbness had crept up his arm. The blade made a sharp ringing sound as it fell back down to the ice. Bergön's lips formed a word. "How? The path has been laid. Tell your war mother your people have to move to the north. Seek the Frostguard. They will welcome you. There you will find mastery of what you are." Her face returned to the shadow, and Bergön opened his eyes. The fire was no longer burning. A fresh layer of snow had fallen, and the light on the horizon made a promise that tomorrow would become today. Shortly after, the Kelagor started migration north. There were voices that opposed the decision, but when on the way out of the Vale an avalanche crushed the site they had called their home for the past winter, these voices quieted, and it was the first time that Bergön was called Herald, which means Herald. The Kelagor became bloodsworn to the Frostguard and settled close to the frozen citadel. They built their homes from the ice and stone of the region. They became miners and stonemasons and prospered in the shadow of the citadel. It was after the third year that Bergön was called to the citadel and was introduced into the ranks of the Draklorn, the highest priest that served the current Draklorn leader. This devoted group were warriors, so he was clothed in leather and steel and trained in combat. Not every warrior was an iceborn, who were accustomed with true ice weapons. Every night he dreamed of a darkness and people frozen in ice. Eventually, the Draklorn's leader revealed herself to be Lissandra. They walked to the deepest depths of the world, on the ice that bridged the rift between them and the void. And there was a silence, the silence of nothing, of darkness and of true ice. But the silence was not perfect, because the ice was melting. "The presence under the surface is stirring," Lissandra told him. "Are you ready to do your part in keeping them away. And on the edge of the world, Bergøn swore his loyalty to the cause, no matter the cost. In time, he became the most capable tool of the witch, seeking Iceborn to feed their dreams to the Watchers, spreading the word of the Frostguard, building statues of the Third Sisters throughout the Freljord. He served her until his hair was as white as winter, but he did not die. Where his body weakened, a cold settled in. Ice started moving through his bones. The pact he had spoken on the deepest rift kept him alive, and dark magic bound him to his purpose. For over a millennia, Bergøn is Lissandra's most devoted follower. Some say he loves her, some say he hates her for tricking him into this unlife, but few know of him in the first place. For centuries, he is the leader of the Frostguard, and after the witch herself, no Iceborn has his experience. Wherever he goes, a silence follows him, a silence like the cracking ice of a glacier standing centuries unmoved. But now there has been change, and even the thickest ice moves. After her fight with Nunu and Willem, Lissandra is sure that Nunu is the sword she can use against the void, because he has the power to create true ice. Bergøn has a new mission, to make way for the frozen messiah. And if Nunu can end the war, maybe he can finally rest. Bergøn's weapon is a pickaxe, in remembrance of his people who are still known to be the miners and stonemasons of the Freljord. His mask is a reference to the Frostguard Eye and the Watchers. The thing he, just like Lissandra, is most afraid of. A bit different to the Mage Seekers, I made two kind of passives. Both are pretty crazy and utterly impossible in the game because of art resources, but this is a place where we can dream about cool stuff, so here we go. When Bergøn uses his E and ultimate, he freezes the ground. In frozen terrain, he heals for 4 to 8% of the damage he deals and gains 10 to 20% attack speed. This passive will eventually cover most of the map in Frost, basically a winter map, coming with the champion. The thought is that if he plays aggressively, he prepares zones for further plays, slowly covering his side of the map, then both rivers in ice, and finally the enemy jungle. This would be a play on him bringing the winter and preparing the Freljord for the frozen messiah. The other passive would be Bergøn creates frozen structures at levels 1, 6, 11 and 16 that buff him. His skills, taken towers and monsters, are sacrifices and add to the effect. Kills grants attack speed and haste, towers taken adaptive force, and monsters resistances. Bergøn should be able to choose a place for the structures in predetermined spots on the map. This gives him the opportunity to react to changing situations and prepare for teamfights. Additionally, if his team prefers to fight for certain objectives, he can mark out that area. Thematically, the statues will show the growing influence of the Draklorn over the Freljord. Now to his active abilities. Q. Winter's Blow. Passive. Bergøn's abilities apply frost. His auto-attack Shatter the Mark, dealing extra damage, shredding resistances for 6 seconds. Bergøn slashes in a circle around him, dealing damage, and applying frost. Bergøn's Q is a good tool to push and clear out camps. It will have a short cooldown so that he can be a great Spellblade user. W. The Sister's Vision. Bergøn channels to get vision of an area. This includes the area behind small walls. If a champion is in vision for 1 second, he gains vision of Bergøn. He can reactivate his ability to blink towards his enemy, affecting everyone he hits with frost. Bergøn's W is the first ability I adapted from the comments. I changed it up so that it suits his playstyle a bit more. But reading the comment, I thought it would be so cool to have this ability on a hunter character. So thank you Star Charger Studios for sharing the idea. E. Crushing Shards. Bergøn uses a shattering strike with his pickaxe to smash the ground in front of him and knock up enemies. I don't think there's much to be told about his E because it's the typical aim to CC ability, which a lot of bruisers have. I picked his E for creating the eyes because it fits thematically and is not his most used ability, because then he could just as well have higher base stats. R. Herald of Winter. Bergøn heralds the winter, freezing a part of the map. Everyone on the terrain is affected by 1 instant of frost. 15 seconds after using R, Bergøn gains access to his second ability. It deals damage based on his HP and AD, and 200 to 500 HP and 25 to 35% bonus movement speed. About the passives. Abilities in League of Legends are something which often feel like a copy of something else, or so unhinged that it's impossible to do. But if we are not trying something new, we would always end up with kinda the same. Him changing the map would probably eat so many resources that the only way it would be possible would be a repeating pattern that is subtle enough to cover the whole map without messing with clarity. Skins would probably be rare or expensive. Also, for the second passive, it would be cool to buff the whole team, but that way a lot of his power budget goes into other characters, which would be a heavy burden on his confidence. As you see, I don't say those are the best abilities for this character, so let me know what you think and how you would like him to play out. And this is Bergøn, the head of the Draklorn, High Priest of Lissandra, a Pathmaker and the Herald of Winter. With this, I will open the other Runeterra regions and go through your recommendations, as well as the things I still have on my list, to create more champions that fit in this world. Also, I will return with some champion reworks, and because these videos always take some time, I will fill the in-between with doing some reworks on League of Legends champion faces. It's well known that most female champions and newer male champions after Kayn share a lot of the same facial features. So now don't forget to like and subscribe. This was Arthis, and I'll see you in the next video.